My name is Patty Taylor, and this is Jordan Copeland, and we are Curriculum Instructional Specialists with Classworks. So today we're going to break down the steps on how to support your IEP goals through Classworks progress monitoring. And these steps are going to include what you see: reviewing your screener for actionable data, providing support to write your IEP goals based on your student's largest deficit, using Classworks skill-based progress monitoring, tracking students' progress by reviewing that data and providing implementing that intervention, and then documenting your students' progress and specific data points. And then finally, at the end, we're going to walk you through a sample IEP where we're going to just show you everything that we've discussed. So, Jordan, you ready? Let's go ahead and jump right in. And so let's start by looking at the IEP objectives and goals. These are often rooted in domain deficits. First, start by identifying the student's biggest domain learning gap, and then use that to guide your IEP writing process. We've heard that sometimes teachers inherit IEP objectives from the previous year that were written by another teacher. We understand the importance of not reinventing the wheel, but that can create a stagnant mindset. So once you have a framework using Classworks, you can update your objectives as your students grow.
Yeah, absolutely, Patty. And the first step would be to administer a screener or the Classworks Universal Screener. When administering a screener, you want one that is easy to administer, simple to understand, and one that provides actionable data. And what meaningful data can the screener give you? Well, actionable data to support your IEP goals, right? So when viewing the universal screener data, you can focus on the student's biggest needs.
Right. And Jordan, you know, your students may have several needs, and you as the teacher must decide which area to focus on first. Some teachers may prefer to focus on the area that is closest to the target in an effort to close that gap quicker and move to another area, while another teacher may decide on the deficit skill that requires the greatest growth. Having that flexibility to make instructional decisions for your students is one great thing about Classworks. So when you are focusing on your students' data, you can view the Students' Universal Screener data under the Test Data button. This view will show you the proficiency scores for each large domain to gain information to make those instructional decisions about your students' IEP goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And so looking over this data, there's a few questions to ask yourself. Did the student place at the low or high end of the range? Is there a particular key strand in which the student scored below the time of your target and therefore needs additional support? If a student was assigned multiple strands at various levels, you'll want to see what the fall target score was for their grade level and look at their readiness level of where they scored. So here you can see on this example, the fall target was 410, and the student overall scored below the fall target at 320. Then you see the domain breakdown, just as Patty mentioned, and with the biggest domain deficit of algebra at 200, right?
That's right.
And it's important to see, where is the student ready to learn? And so we can use our Universal Scaled Scores article. We're going to put that in chat. And you can open up that article and see at the very bottom of that article is the time of year target. And you're going to be able to see exactly where the student is ready to learn, right? And so for algebra here, it's in fall kindergarten, right? And that's going to help us prioritize and identify which goal the student should complete first. Now, again, this may be the strand they score the lowest in or the strand that is most applicable to what prerequisite is needed. Scoring at 200 is that, again, domain, the biggest one to be prioritized.
Yeah, that's right, Jordan. But, you know, perhaps you're creating an IEP goal wanting to use another screener other than our Classworks Universal Screener. And so you'll want to know which domain to progress monitor with Classworks. And we have you supported with that too, because we have a help document, SLD Concerns with Progress Monitoring Skill Categories, a crosswalk, so to speak. And this help document can provide you with information to decide which types of progress monitoring to use, along with the specific domain, if you choose, to skill-based progress monitor, which we'll talk about, more in just a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll also put this SELD document in chat as well. All right, so whether you're using our screener or a partner assessment to identify the need, how are we going to support that objective? This is where we create a goal for the student to tackle. Use our progress monitoring to support and document the student's growth towards their goal. Here at Classworks, we're excited to offer 2 options now for progress monitoring to best support the student's need. We still offer what we've always had, which is curriculum-based sampling, but now we have additionally added skill-based. So first, let's discuss curriculum sampling. These weekly probes provide the student with questions that span everything they should know at their ready to learn grade level, which is easily identified from our screener, like we just showed. Now, there are 20 equated forms with equally weighted questions of concepts at the same level of difficulty. So this approach is valuable because it reflects the student's response to the intervention as it impacts the student's overall understanding of the core content. Curriculum sampling shows even the smallest changes in student improvement, allowing educators to monitor and track student progress, even when students are performing well below grade level. So curriculum sampling is relevant if you're looking at a large grade growth from the start of the year to the end. With Classworks, you're able to track your student not only for the 12-week intervention period, but Classworks enables you to monitor student growth across the span of a year. We've added annual target rate of improvements that are shown for 12 weeks, 24 weeks, and 36 weeks. So this allows you to adjust your student support so that students are reaching their yearly goal.
Yeah. So you've discussed curriculum sampling. So now let's talk about our skill-based progress monitoring. The progress monitoring uses global indicators to measure growth within a specific domain or strand. And there are multiple mirrored forms that all focus on the same domain-specific skills at that same level of difficulty. This approach, of course, is very valuable when domain-specific monitoring is a preferred or a necessary component of a child's IEP or MTSS academic plan. Curriculum sampling, though, and global indicators are strong options when it comes to documenting IEP goals. Both are very simple and automated process, but what we're finding is that skill-based progress monitoring is many times the preferred version as it drills down to the most identified need to close that student's gap quickly. Then you can move on to the next deficit and continue moving.
Yeah, exactly. And so exactly the reason for today's purpose, we're going to run through examples utilizing our new skill-based progress monitoring, again, as it seems to be the most widely used for IEP documentation. All right, so just to reiterate, from the screener, you have identified the student's biggest learning gap and are ready to tackle that specific domain using skill-based progress monitoring. You may be asking yourself 2 more questions. What content do these probes include? And how do I know which probe to assign? Well, we can help. So Classworks has this handy curriculum strands chart to easily align skill-based progress monitoring to your student's identified skill need. Again, this will be in chat. And so here you can see all of the grades and the subjects attached here. So like if we, for instance, launch 4th grade math, right? You're able to see the domain at the top and all the skills that the child will see weekly on their CBM probe. So we assigned, so there's a lot for math here. Let me just scroll down here so you can see all of those. And so if we assigned 4th grade algebra probe, these are all of the objectives that would be received each week for that student. All right. And then once a student starts to take their weekly probes, a couple of things automatically happen. First, there is easy data tracking where probe scores are tracked on this chart week by week. Then students are also assigned intervention instruction to support their progress monitoring probe. Not only that, but you will also be able to view down at the bottom here, the cumulative question response that reports out a detailed list of those skills listed in the curriculum strands chart. Right, see, it all kind of comes full circle. So this shows how students are performing towards mastery of their IEP goal. You can see which questions they got wrong and which ones they got right here with these easy color coding. It'll give you guidance on what specifics your students need more support on, and we'll talk more about this detailed reporting shortly. And also, it's important to note that as students work on their weekly probes, it's important to document the support provided for them, right? Anything that's done differently that impacts their weekly probes. Ideally, this is a controlled environment, right? A quiet testing space, same time and day each week. But let's say a student was in quarantine, or you decide to adjust the time of day from before lunch to after lunch. You can easily input those notes directly here in the Classworks database.
Yeah, that's a great tips, to remember, Jordan. So let's go ahead, though, and notice the next section of the report. Jordan touched on this just a minute ago, but it's worth repeating. Classworks includes cumulative question responses. And so this really allows you to drill down to specific concepts. You can determine students' strengths and areas of additional support based on this data. And when you adjust your instruction to meet their needs, you can even use this to create small group support. And don't forget the documentation. In education, we're all about documenting. So right now, we're in the live product, but all of this is printable. The progress monitoring report gives you the proof that students are working on what they need to be working on. At the bottom of this report, you can even see the individual instructional units students have been assigned and working on in their ILPs.
And speaking of individualized instruction, let's take a moment to highlight the students' individualized learning paths. As we've mentioned a few times already, Classworks is a robust intervention solution. The universal screener provides rich, actionable data. Progress monitoring there is here to easily track students' growth. And then we have our individualized learning. So every student in Classworks has their own intervention plan that's automatically created from their assessment results. And if they're taking progress monitoring results as well. As soon as students complete a probe, they're assigned specific units for intervention. So let's check it out. So back here in the same student detail page where you're able to see the students' test data, their progress monitoring, you're also able to see their individualized learning paths here. So they automatically receive this intervention support for their IEP goal, and you can see which data point was actually assigned to which instructional unit. So if I launch this, I can click on this history feature and see which data point assigned this particular instructional unit. It's also important here to highlight our learning progression. So we have researched this, and this has been designed to be in the most teachable order. So students are receiving prerequisite skills to master those easier foundational skills first, before moving on to more challenging skills that are more of a productive struggle. And then the students' ILPs also have these handy features at the top, filters at the top, I guess you'd call features and filters, and showing time spans here. So you can adjust this. Mastery level and domain. So you can even filter here by the skill-based probe that she's been assigned to be able to see the mastery level, and you can use this as mastery criteria. And from here, you can actually press print for more documentation so that you can see all completed instructional units, those mastery levels again, time on task, as well. So all of these reports, progress monitoring as well, can be printed.
Perfect. Great, Jordan. Thank you so much for that. So now that we've discussed the why behind supporting an IEP goal using Classworks, let's walk through the process using our 5th grade student, Tiara Robinson's information. So first, let's review Tiara's data. Select the Test Data button. And what do you first notice when you're reviewing her data? Well, we see an obvious deficit in the area of reading. What does that score 230 mean? If we refer back to that scaled scores document that we mentioned earlier in the Classworks Help Library, we can find that the score of 230 coincides with fall of 1st grade. Now that we've reviewed the data from Tiara's assessment, let's stop and think about writing an IEP. Remember that the assessment from Classworks Universal Screener is just one piece of the puzzle when determining your student's IEP goal. Reading is a very large domain that entails many smaller specific skills. So when reviewing her data, it was decided to focus on reading, and more specifically, Tiara was struggling with making inferences. So the objective or goal is for Tiara to correctly infer reading passages on a first grade level 75% of the time. So since we've identified that goal for Tiara, now we need to identify which skills-based or which progress monitoring we want to use. And this can be a little bit more straightforward when looking at her skill-based progress monitoring, since we know that her deficit is reading. But it's still important to double check what she'll be working on. So let's take a peek at the chart that we used earlier. When viewing the curriculum strands chart, select the Ready to Learn grade and subject. For first grade ELA, you will see the 3 options that are available and confirm that inferences is being addressed via the skill-based probe of informational and literacy reading comprehension.
Yeah, absolutely. So over here. So to reiterate, Tiara's IEP goal is about inferences, right, and reading, which is based on her universal screener deficit skill. It needs to be progress monitored using skill-based specific progress monitoring, informational and literary reading comprehension. So let's walk through the processes of beginning that progress monitoring. So I'm just going to press exit out here, and I'm going to press start next to her progress monitoring. Now, here you have our 2 options. When you start progress monitoring, it defaults to curriculum sampling, and you're going to want to switch it over to skill-based, right? And then you're going to want to click on this skill drop down where you're able to choose here which skill we're progress monitoring on. So I'm going to switch it over to reading. Next, you're going to select the CBM probe level. This level should reflect the intervention level of the scale, not their current grade level. Now, if you're using the universal screener scaled scores, we can easily see the recommended readiness level of where she's performing and what needs to be assigned. So here you can see that bold down here. But it's always an effective practice to review the universal screener results as just one piece of your RTI puzzle. Consider other data points such as classroom observations, parent input, etc., that you feel relevant here. So with that being said, you have the ability to manually select a different CBM level as well if you feel that the student should be placed differently. Then next you see a rate of improvement goal. You can adjust this from moderate to aggressive, and it will adjust the slope of the data collection, the slope of the line. And this can be altered after the intervention has been started if needed. Typically, though, we recommend keeping this at moderate. And then, so once you've chosen all of that, the CBM levels and data, you can see your start and ending dates for your running record, and then you just press start, right? And the duration of the CBM is set for 12 weeks and can be stopped or edited during any of that time.
That's right. So we know that tracking Tiara's progress by viewing her progress monitoring data is really critical. So let's take a look at her progress monitoring data in Classworks. At the top, you can see she's being monitored at the first grade level, skill-based progress monitoring in the area of reading, along with a date range for the active CBM, which was started on October the 3rd and ended in November. The connected purple dots show how the student scored on each week's probe. Notice the second data point from week 2. Tiara did much better, but notice the note from the teacher. The teacher says the student was out of school due to COVID, took the probe at home. So this is very valuable information. Notice then too the green line. This is the target rate of improvement for the 12-week duration. This is how much the student's expected to improve based on the current interventions. The target rate of improvement is determined by the goal that was selected, as Jordan mentioned earlier, moderate or aggressive. This includes a number that shows the expected growth points each week. In her case, it's a moderate rate of improvement of 2.72% per week for 12 weeks. Now, you'll notice the yellow line is the current rate of improvement and is calculated based on the student's weekly results and estimates which way the student is heading based on their current trend. And so this line is calculated using the least squares regression equation and is required at least with 3 different probes from the student. This also includes a number to show you the student's actual growth. And we can see here, looking at this data, that Tiara is below the target. However, though, the main thing that we really want to look at when examining this report is comparing the student's trend line to the target line. Although it's calculated using individual scores, over time, the student's trend line should be sloping very closely to the target line. If it is sloping steeply, say that 3 times, that kind of gets you tongue-tied. If it's sloping steeply above or below that target line, the student's intervention might need to be addressed. And so we can see with Tiara's data that her last 2 data points are trending in the right direction, and that she has only 1 probe that's extremely low. So by carefully monitoring her over the course of the next few weeks, this is going to help us determine if her interventions are working.
Yes, absolutely, Patty. And then again, if you're moving down, further down this chart or this screen here, we can see those cumulative question response table again, which is below the graph and weekly details. And just to reiterate this table breaks down the objectives the student was tested on and how well they did. Skill-based CBM probes are scored on a 0 to 100% range. And this data is an excellent tool to determine needs, individual or small group. Now, a green dot indicates the student answered the question correctly that week, while a red dot indicates they did not answer the question correctly. A quick view can let you know what is a strength for Tiara and which areas are struggles. And you're also able to actually click into these. So for instance, paraphrasing and summarizing text is a consistent 0%. You're actually able to click into that and see the question and how the student answered and what the correct answer was, right? If you're seeing a lot of missed question items, chances are that the student isn't reaching mastery on those instructional units right in their ILP. So what we want to do is head on over to see how are they doing and in their ILP, and make sure that we're monitoring and adjusting the intervention instruction that Tiara is working on. So again, if you're seeing a lot of missed question items on the cumulative question response, again, chances are we're not seeing much mastery. So we can see here that is the case, right? Tiara has pretty low mastery on her individualized learning path. So you want to ask yourself, is there an opportunity of reteaching? We can easily reassign and support Tiara as she works through her individualized learning path. And it's important for a teacher to actively monitor her completed work so Tiara is equipped with mastering those more challenging skills she's working on as she works up her progression.
Yeah. So, and too, as the school year continues, Tiara's data is monitored and modifications are going to be made. And if the expected growth is not happening, then obviously a review of the interventions must take place. And so some questions you might want to ask is, are interventions being provided consistently? How much time is Tiara spending in Classworks weekly? And remember, at Classworks, we recommend for Tier 3 and special ed students 45 to 60 minutes per subject per week, in addition to the 20 minutes for progress monitoring. Another question is she getting that necessary time on building her skills with her ILP? And by reflecting on her testing environment while she's taking her progress monitoring probes, that's another great way to evaluate. So remember, too, that you have the ability to look at live data and to print reports to help you make all of these decisions. By answering these questions and reviewing your data, you can see a comprehensive picture of Tiara's learning. Mm-hmm. So, wow, Jordan, let's take a breath. We have covered a lot of information today. And thank you so much. As we've covered all these ins and outs of creating and documenting IEP goals, we appreciate your attention. And now as you go and you work on your students' IEP goals and support those IEP goals with Classworks, it's normal to have questions. So Classworks is the best at providing the support that you're going to need or that you want. You could start by scheduling a meeting with your curriculum instructional specialist to talk through your students' goals. And also, here are some other ways you can get support. Help.classworks.com. Use that red chat button that's in the Classworks platform and sign up for our free online courses. And don't forget our Classworks Connect sessions for up to 5 teachers. Okay, so if anybody has any questions, throw them in chat. And Jessica, have you received any questions?
Not yet. I know everyone has been feverishly writing down everything, but I do have one that just came in saying read aloud. So if you want to kind of touch base on that, I think it was maybe in reference to one of the components of Classworks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there is a read aloud feature throughout all of Classworks. So here, this this was opened from the cumulative question response, and students are able to have all of these sections read aloud to them, and it is chunked out so students can easily track as it's read to them. So there are lots of read aloud features, Eve, throughout the whole program. Automatically, like mini lessons are read, quick quizzes, and then there's definitely some the screener also does have the read aloud feature as well. And then I got a question as well. Can you talk briefly about looking at the read in the ILP along with those questions missed and how to go back and possibly reassign skills in a lower level, going into all skills versus recommended skills? That is a great question.
That is a great question.
Awesome. So let's do just that. All right. So this gets me excited. All right. So we're going to head on over to progress monitoring, and we can see here, right, our specific questions, and you can see some of the strengths and weaknesses of our students, right? So for instance, read and identify features of nonfiction overall, 4 out of 5 right, where paraphrasing and summarizing text is a weakness. So we can head on over to individualized learning and to reassign. So these units have been assigned from her progress monitoring, and you can double check that again by looking at the history feature. And all you have to do to reassign units is just toggle them on. So and it actually says up here in the right-hand corner, skills reassigned. A best practice we always say is always reassign at least the mini lesson and the quick quiz. So if you have multiple components here, definitely make sure to reassign that mini lesson because that's the direct instruction and that quick quiz. And then Patty, you want to talk about assigning the all skills tab?
Yes, Jordan. So, if they needed to, a teacher needed to add some prerequisite skills, you could go to the all skills tab and open that up. And you could, if you were working at 3rd grade level and you wanted to reach down and assign some from 2nd or 1st grade, all of those are arranged in our learning progression, and you can just turn those on using that same toggle method that Jordan talked about just a second ago.
Ladies, we have one more question as well that rolled in. I think we have a second or two to get an answer from Miss Eve. It says she already has the reading and math IEP goals that she would like to monitor weekly. Is that possible using Classworks?
Yes, that would definitely be possible. And, since you already have specific goals that are written, I would consider setting up a time for you to sit and talk with your curriculum instructional specialist so that they could really show you and walk you through those steps. Because we really did like an overview today of how to do that. And how to select those goals. But since you already have your goals in place, I would suggest, setting up a time with your curriculum instructional specialist. If you don't know who that person is, you can, reach out through your help, that help chat button, and they will put you in touch with your curriculum instructional specialist.
Absolutely. Because right now it's a little bit like fitting a square peg in a round hole, right?
Right.
So we need to listen to where you're at with your IEP goals and then be able to adjust and find the best way to document for you. So I definitely recommend it. Great questions.
Those are wonderful questions.
Agreed. Everybody, y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much again. We appreciate it.